What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Jimmy Mullen podcast. As you might be able to tell, you probably be able to tell better if you're watching the YouTube version of this. The backdrop is a bit different. A lot of the pictures have been scaled down, and that's because I actually moved around some furniture in my room. My bed is now where the podcast little area was, and then the podcast stuff is now where my bed used to be. And then I also swapped my desk and my TV setup. That way I could have my TV set up across from my bed so I can watch TV a lot easier. And then, like, when I play video games with friends or I have friends over, you know, they're not all just hunched on my bed. It was in, like, an awkward position. I was never really a fan of how it all worked out and all that. But I ended up making it work this time around, I think. It's a bit less spacious over by where my movies and stuff like that are, but that's okay. I don't really need to grab things from there as often, especially towards the bottom shelves, so it's not really that big a deal. And also, now I have a bit more space, in this area. It's, like, because I had my dresser and my shelves that were surrounding the podcast area, so it was a little cramped, especially when I had 4 people here at a time, including myself. So, having this bigger space means that, podcast episodes with like more than 3 people will end up being a lot easier to do. I'm also eventually planning on getting a bigger table, as I realize that, while this table's great, we're also hunched around the table because we all want to be in the camera shot. So I'm thinking if I get a bigger table, it might be better. Might be better suited for this. I'm not at the point where I have multiple camera angles, but if that were the case, I would probably have like a bunch of seats that we'd all be, a bit separate from each other. We're not like hunched up, but this is kind of the best I can really do with what I have at the moment. But I think it's working out. I think it's pretty great. Anyway, today's episode is another news roundup video. I've done a lot of these for solo episodes, but I'm actually planning on expanding that to a bunch of other things. I discussed this on social media. I put out a post also saying that solo episodes are going to be a bit more frequent now because I'm now working a job again that's taking up a lot of my time, and scheduling conflicts are just a big issue when it comes to making guest episodes. Of course, you got to rely on other people for those. So solo episodes are going to be more of a norm, which is what I initially intended when I started this. It's just I got too carried away with the guest episodes because of how excited I was that like all my friends wanted to be a part of it. I'm going to be making more of these news roundups, as well as covering specific topics, such as my thoughts on watching new things and rewatching things I've seen before. I have a couple things in mind. I just started watching Breaking Bad, so I'm going to be doing a look at each season as I watch them. Those will be separate episodes, so we'll do 5 Breaking Bad videos over the next couple months. I also have an idea in regards to videos about my thoughts on The Spectacular Spider-Man, which is a show I'm going to be watching pretty soon. I'm going to be revisiting Attack on Titan Season 1 and then watching the rest of the show, which I've never seen. And there's a bunch of other stuff I have in mind. Some Ben 10 stuff, some Nintendo stuff, all sorts of things like that. So if you guys are excited for those, or if you even have any suggestions for any future content, let me know in the comments below of this podcast. If you go on the YouTube version, you can leave a comment and let me know. I would greatly appreciate your feedback. But with that said, today's topics are going to be Deadpool 3 got a release date and some info, including the fact that Wolverine will be returning, being played by Hugh Jackman. We'll also be discussing James Earl Jones stepping down as the voice of Darth Vader and him agreeing to have his voice be used in AI technology for future projects. The MCU series Armor Wars is now going to be a film instead of a 6-episode series, which is pretty awesome. We'll be talking about the beef between Drake and Anthony Fantano because I think it's hilarious, and I just wanted to talk about it for a little bit. Lil Nas X also released a new song recently called WALKIN, so I'll give my thoughts on that, as well as my thoughts on the craziness of Deji versus Mayweather in the boxing ring. So, without further ado, let's discuss all these things. We're going to start out with Deadpool 3. First up, it got an official release date of September 26th, 2024. This is going to be the first of the Deadpool movies to be a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is pretty crazy. It's being made by Marvel Studios. This is going to be a pretty exciting one for so many reasons. For one, it's Deadpool coming to the MCU, and it's still Ryan Reynolds. It's still the same Deadpool, pretty much. Or they'll end up doing a variant kind of thing, but it'll be like the same character, but not the same character. We don't really know yet. Maybe there'll be some kind of incursion that happens, and then he gets transferred into the MCU. He's like one of the only survivors of his universe or something like that. There were some ideas floating around about the movie in pre-development before this announcement. Actually, before the Disney acquisition of 21st Century Fox, there was actually an idea for it to be a cross-country road trip movie featuring Wolverine. And now it has been confirmed that Wolverine, Hugh Jackman, is coming back for this movie, even after the events of Logan, even after that movie happening and existing, being a send-off for the character. He's coming back one more time. And this will be his last time, as he has said. They've also said that it's going to be taking place separately from Logan. That movie takes place in the future, in 2029. And they're not going to be touching that movie in regards to it being canon or anything like that. This is going to be a completely separate story, so it probably takes place before Logan, if anything. If it is the same exact Fox X-Men Wolverine that we've seen all these years, then great. And if not, maybe he's a variant of Wolverine that Deadpool meets somehow. We don't necessarily know. We don't really know what the deal is. We do know that Wolverine exists in the MCU, though. It's already been teased that he will show up at some point. There was a little newspaper headline shown for a couple seconds in She-Hulk where they talk about a man with claws getting in bar fights. So that's something. There's also been this thing floating around about the X-Men characters in general being a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's been this rumor that there's a contract that hasn't expired in regards to the current cast of the X-Men. I believe it's not going to expire until after 2025 when Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars come out. Basically, all of these characters that were, signed to these actors, they have the legal right to play these characters. They have the legal obligation because of the contract to play these characters in these movies until the contract expires. So that's why we've started to see some characters or some versions of some characters popping up in the MCU, but it's been very, very picky as to who. For example, we got Evan Peters returning as Pietro Maximoff or Quicksilver in WandaVision. However, while he was playing the role of Quicksilver, it was an imposter. It was this guy named Ralph Boner, who had been possessed by Agatha Harkness, and he was playing the role of Wanda's brother Pietro, which the character existed in both cinematic universes, and the reason they killed off Quicksilver in Age of Ultron was most likely due to the fact that the X-Men universe had already established a really cool Quicksilver that everybody likes, and because of legal contracts and stuff with things they were allowed to use, they could never refer to him as Quicksilver. And same with Wanda, up until now not being called the Scarlet Witch. So there's stuff like that. And then we got Patrick Stewart coming back as Professor X in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. The big yellow wheelchair thing in the green suit. That was his appearance in the cartoon that they transitioned into live action, which is pretty different from the live action Patrick Stewart we already know. So it's likely that he's a variant that just happens to look just like the Fox X-Men Patrick Stewart. I have a feeling that's what the case is. And, if that's the case, we might even get the same thing for Wolverine. And there's a variant of, this guy, Ralph Boner that looks like it's actually a mutant superhero in the comics, and she just happened to pick a person that, looks like the Fox X-Men guy, just speaking in reference to the MCU. Obviously we know what the deal is. So because of these things, these little tiny appearances of characters that they either want to keep on or characters that they can have a little workaround with, that's why they've been popping up in these projects and not characters like Storm or Beast or anything like that. It's because they want to wait for these contracts to expire and then they can start bringing them in. And, that's kind of been the reason why we haven't seen an X-Men project yet, how we have gotten a Fantastic Four announcement, but not an X-Men announcement. Fantastic Four is more of a deserved MCU project right now, as far as I am concerned. And that's mainly because of the fact that we haven't really had a really good Fantastic Four movie in a long time. You could argue that we've never had a good one either. But X-Men, we've had up and down movies, and a lot of them are pretty great. So, at this point, a lot of them are like 20 plus years around. Maybe it's time for new actors, but, they just can't bring everyone in right now because of these contracts. I would like to see a lot of these Fox X-Men characters come back in some way. Maybe they'll be a part of Secret Wars. We don't really know at the moment. But this will be the first film of Phase 6. Previously, they advertised that Fantastic Four would be that. They also had a placeholder date at Comic-Con, but it now looks like Deadpool 3 does have that release date. And then the Fantastic Four movie will follow on November 8th, 2024. So about 2 months later, we're getting, 2 Fox MCU-based movies pretty much, with at least with characters associated with these movies. And now that this has been confirmed, I can safely say that this is easily one of my most anticipated movies coming out in the next couple of years. I love the first 2 Deadpool movies, the first one especially. I really got to go back and watch the second one again. But I also love a lot of the X-Men movies. I love Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I think he plays a great Wolverine. So the fact that we're going to get to see him one more time, and the fact that he's going to be crossing over with Deadpool to hopefully make up for X-Men Origins Wolverine, I'm all for it. I can't wait for this movie. I'm going to be seeing it opening night. It's going to be amazing. I got to wait about 2 years, but it's okay. This is going to be incredible. Speaking of the MCU, a show that had previously been announced back in December of 2020 is now going to be a film instead of a series, Armor Wars. This show was supposed to star Don Cheadle as War Machine, which, the character started in the first Iron Man, but then was recasted to Don Cheadle in Iron Man 2, and that's the guy we've had since. He was in Avengers Age of Ultron, Captain America Civil War, as well as Infinity War and Endgame. He's also set to be in the Secret Invasion series on Disney+. And now, and that was supposed to follow into Armor Wars, but now Armor Wars is now going to be a movie, which is pretty sick. It really makes me wonder, what other shows could have been movies, because a lot of these I feel like are too stretched out. Not to say that they really need to cut content, but I feel like sometimes not really much happens in an episode. Sometimes it kind of seems like filler. So maybe if they were able to, crush them down a little bit, they could make them into longer feature films. But it's kind of getting to the point for me where I'd much rather have an okay movie than an okay show. Because I feel like a show, you've got so much to go through, and then there's episodes of a show where they're not as good as other ones, and then you got to sit through that. Especially if they're coming out week by week. A couple episodes of She-Hulk, I won't lie, I was a little underwhelmed, and I'll get to those once the show ends in a future episode. But yeah, maybe this is a really good thing for this project, and now we're finally going to get a movie starring War Machine. We had Black Widow get her own movie after Endgame, and now we're getting War Machine having his own movie. This is another Phase 1 Avenger being recognized more to get his own film, which is pretty awesome. And yeah, I'm really excited for this. It's set to take place, after Endgame, after Spider-Man No Way Home. Stark Technology gets into the wrong hands, and, Don Cheadle has to come in and stop everything from going bad and things like that. I'm sure this is going to be good. I could imagine things like from Spider-Man Far From Home with the drones will somehow come into fruition because they were confiscated. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Armor Wars becoming a movie. I think this is a good thing, and it makes me wonder, maybe we'll get other shows turned into movies in the future. We'll just have to wait and see. Moving on over to the Star Wars part of Disney, we got to talk about James Earl Jones stepping down as the voice of Darth Vader, and the fact that he has handed his voice and likeness over to Disney to be used in AI technology for future projects. This was in a Vanity Fair interview, and he has talked about that he is now stepping down as the voice of Darth Vader. He is 91 years old, by the way, so I guess it had to happen at some point. He's also known for voicing Mufasa in the original animated as well as the live action or quote unquote live action adaptation of The Lion King. He's played Darth Vader in every live action project from the original trilogy to Revenge of the Sith to Rogue One. And actually, in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series that recently came out, he actually didn't even come back to voice him. All of that was AI, and this wasn't even known ahead of time. And I don't even remember really recognizing that when watching the series. If you had told me that, I would have probably tried to hear it more, and I would have been like, okay, yeah, maybe. But even now I'm thinking about it, and I don't even remember a time where I was like, that sounds fake. I don't know. I haven't gone back to look at parts of Kenobi yet to really try and hear it. But honestly, part of me doesn't want to, just so I don't have to be like, oh yeah, that's not him. But honestly, I feel like with a voice, deepfakes are more convincing, or they're starting to get that way, especially for a character who you can't see their mouth move or, their facial expressions. It's a bit harder to really narrow that down. I think with a character like Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, while that AI isn't perfect, it's still at the point where you can tell that it's not real. It's starting to sound a bit more convincing. I remember he sounded a bit more robotic in the Mandalorian finale rather than Book of Boba Fett, where they started to improve him more. He definitely also looked more like a PS2 character than in Book of Boba Fett. But yeah, with a character like Darth Vader, I feel like it's different because you can't see his face. You can't see his expression. So having an AI do that, makes more sense. And also, Darth Vader is so iconic that getting a sound-alike just wouldn't, I don't know, it just wouldn't be the same. I hear a lot of sound-alikes across a lot of different pieces of media, when they can't get the original actor to return for something. Even Disney themselves have done it with Disney Infinity. Most of those characters are sound-alikes, and you can tell with a lot of them. This also makes me wonder, did he also sign on to have his voice replicated for Mufasa? Because there is that Mufasa Lion King movie coming out, I believe in 2024. Is that going to also have the same effect? I have a feeling it would. And then it also makes me wonder, is this the beginning of, a new era where we start to see more and more projects use AI, whether it's, someone's appearance or someone's voice. I feel like voices will definitely become more of a norm as time goes on. Personal, appearances and shit, might be a bit farther in the future, but we have started to see it. Of course, like I mentioned with Luke Skywalker and The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, they get a body double and then morph Mark Hamill's face onto the person. And then, they do their thing and mesh them together. And, it's not perfect yet, but it's starting to get there. You can kind of tell, they're trying to really do something with that. Maybe that's the future of these films. Maybe we'll start to see people like Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford come back, like de-aged and things like that in future movies and shows and things like that. It might just happen. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think of this new AI trend that we've started to see with movies and television. Is this the future? Will we ever get to a point where there's no real actors in a movie and it's all computer generated? Who knows? Only the only time will tell. But let me know in the comments below what you think of this. Next up, let's transition away from film and television. Let's head into music. Let's start out by talking about Lil Nas X and his newest song, Star Walkin'. Now, a little bit of background. Lil Nas X came onto the scene to mainstream when he released Old Town Road in 2019, and it became the highest consecutive song on the Billboard charts in the matter of, the weeks that it was on the Billboard charts. It was on there for quite a bit. I think at least like 30 weeks or something. Don't quote me on that, though. Over time, he's released the 7 EP along with his debut album, Montero, and this is one of his first releases since then. He also released the Late to the Party song with NBA YoungBoy back in August. But this new song, Star Walkin', is associated with the League of Legends World Championship tournament, I believe. This is like the theme for it. And the song, I don't think has anything to do with League of Legends other than the fact that it just has the branding associated with it. Lil Nas X, I saw, also took over the League of Legends Twitter. And I also am someone that doesn't know anything about League of Legends. I've never played it. I've just never had an interest in it. I know plenty of people that do play it. More power to you. You guys have your game. I don't know. I don't really know how much. I don't really have much to say about it. I've never played the game, so I can't really give my 2 cents. But yeah, the song's really good. It has nothing to do, like I said, with League of Legends, but he yet again continues to prove that he's starting a movement to normalize the type of music and style that he has, taking on homophobia and racism, to a huge extent. And release after release, he just continues to, break the barrier, prove people wrong. And, he talks about in the song how, these people don't like me. Why look up to people if you can be a legend yourself? Because he just has all that confidence that he can do that. And, the numbers are showing. He releases, all his releases get really high up. He has tons of songs on the radio. He's really popular, and he's one of the more popular artists right now. And I have so much respect for him. He's done a lot for the industry. He's done a lot of things that some people maybe wouldn't consider normal because of the way they were brought up. But I say fuck those people, man. Do your thing, dude. You're fucking killing it. What do you guys think of Lil Nas X's new song, Star Walkin'? Let me know in the comments. Next up, I'm going to touch on this pretty quick. Drake had some beef with YouTuber Anthony Fantano, the internet's busiest music nerd, who's a music critic. He does album reviews and things like that. I've talked about him on the show in the past. I did an episode with my friends John and Joe where I tried to quiz them on the ratings that Fantano gave an album. A lot of them being favorites of theirs. And neither of them had ever really watched his videos, so it was pretty fun to see how well they did. The drama surrounding this all started when Fantano released a video called Drake Slid Into My DMs. And when you watch the video, it's, you're like, there's no way. Like, this is bait, this is a joke. You watch the video and you're like, oh, wow, Drake did that. And then it transitions into him giving him a vegan cookie recipe. And that's when you start to really turn your head and you're like, wait a second, that doesn't seem right. Like, Drake is a goofy guy, but I don't really see him doing anything like this. So, it starts out by saying, like, Anthony, it's Drizzy. I know we don't really see eye to eye about music and that you're not the biggest fan of most of my albums. Thanks for the kind words on Take Care. And if you're reading this, though, but it is what it is. Can always hope you'll like the next one. And then says, but I'm not messaging you about your videos. I'm actually messaging you because I found a really great vegan cookie recipe I'd love you to try. And then starts sending an ingredients list and then the instructions saying, like, preheat the oven to 375, line a large baking sheet with parchment paper, and, put in all your ingredients, add the dry ingredients with the wet mixture, and then scoop 3 tablespoon size mounds of dough on the prepared cookie sheet, leaving a few inches between, blah, 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 yada, yada. And then being like, so that's the recipe. It also adds as a tip that if the dough appears too sticky, add a little more flour, 1 tablespoon at a time, or if the dough appears too dry, add a tablespoon of coconut milk. I'd really appreciate it if you could give this a spin and let me know if it's worth trying myself. Appreciate you. Drizzy out. And it was like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that is real. And you just keep laughing about it because it's like, did he really DM Anthony Fantano giving him a cookie recipe? But then the drama gets crazy because it turns out Drake actually did DM Anthony Fantano. But that was not the message. Fantano actually put up a false DM, and it turns out the real DM we only know about because Drake posted it on his Instagram story himself, and he said, "Your existence is a light 1, and the 1 is because you are alive." And he even uses Fantano's terminology and his way of scoring albums. You know, he's given a lot of Drake's more recent albums like low scores and things like that. So I guess he's mad. And then he says, and because somehow you wifed a black girl, I'm feeling a light to decent one on your existence. So Drake, as you can tell, was not happy with Fantano's reviews of his albums, I guess. So yeah, it turns out Fantano was, trolling people. It was a shit post. Drake actually did DM him, but the DM that he showed to the world was not the actual DM. And then Drake decided to post the actual DM on his Instagram story. And honestly, I think I agree with what a lot of people are saying. Drake seems like he's really petty. And, even saying like, I rate a light to decent one on your existence. He's throwing out a lot of hate to Fantano because Fantano didn't like his album. Even like he's only got a couple million subscribers, but Drake is Drake. He's one of the biggest names in the music industry. He's an A-list celebrity. And, you would think that, one music critic wouldn't get to him so much, but, even so, like this Mullen guy on YouTube really got to him, and it made him DM him saying, I give you a light to decent one on your existence, and a one because somehow you wifed a black girl. So he's bringing race into it for some reason. Like, I don't know. It just seems so soft and petty. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was weird. I definitely wasn't expecting that, but I guess Fantano has gotten to the point where he's that big, and artists are really going in on him. There've been, and Drake's not even the first. There've been plenty of people in the past that have had their beef with Fantano, or they have something to say about him, or they, do interviews with him, or, react to, Fantano's reviews of their albums. Like KSI's done that. So yeah, there are plenty of people that have had issues with Fantano, but I don't think it ever got to a point like this, especially with an artist as big as Drake. So, maybe it just goes to show that Fantano is a lot bigger now. What does this mean for the future of rappers DMing him saying like, fuck you, I hope you die, basically? Yeah, I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of this. And the final topic we're going to discuss today is Deji versus Mayweather. Yeah, you heard that right. This is a real fight that is happening. I think like by the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. So for those of you who don't know, Deji, brother of KSI, both huge YouTubers in their own right. Deji has, entered the boxing scene because of his brother JJ. JJ had his start in early 2018 when he fought Joe Weller and then called out the Paul brothers. And then it led to brothers versus brothers. You had KSI versus Logan Paul and Deji versus Jake Paul, each having their own boxing matches at this big event with like a bunch of other YouTubers on the undercard, like Scarce and Raka Raka. Scarce being there is still hilarious to me, by the way. And every fight that Deji has been a part of since, including his fight with Jake Paul, he's lost. And, the first fight with Jake Paul that he had, he did amazing. Even though he didn't come out victorious, he made Jake Paul's nose bleed. Like he made Jake bleed. And people haven't really done that to Jake since. And now Jake is a pro boxer, and he's, made this his entire life. For better or for worse, I guess. But it's just gotten worse for Deji pretty much ever since then, other than his most recent fight, which we'll get to. He fought Vinny Hacker in the Battle of the Platforms event last year, and he was the only YouTuber of Team YouTube that lost their fight. Vinny Hacker was the only one from TikTok's side that won his fight because Deji lost to him. And it was a sad moment for lots of people. JJ made a call-out video because that was like the only way you could reach Deji and, get something to his head. And then it happened again when he fought Alex Wasabi. He lost to Alex Wasabi, and JJ made another call-out video. And KSI was then set to fight Alex Wasabi, but then Alex Wasabi pulled out. He claimed it was a concussion, but there's speculation that he pulled out because he changed his mind on fighting him for whatever reason. And then JJ made it a 2 fights 1 night event. So it might have worked out in his favor, even though the people he fought were pretty much nobodies. He still came out on top, won both fights. And the fact that he had 2 fights in one night, that was a first for the influencer boxing scene since it started like 4 years ago. But everything was good again when he fought Fuzi back this past August, and he won. He actually won his first boxing match, and now professionally he is 1-0. That was his first pro boxing fight, and he won the fight. And I guess now technically he's an undefeated pro boxer. So that's pretty awesome. I think it's pretty hilarious. I was so happy. Like, that was easily the best part of the whole event, seeing Deji win. I talked about it in a previous solo episode, so I'm actually going to have that on the end card at the end of this, so you can check that out once you're done with this episode. I will say that influencer boxing has kind of gotten to a point where a lot of it I just don't really care for. I was really invested in it when it started because, you know, you had KSI and Logan Paul fighting each other, and then had all these other YouTubers coming in to the scene. And it's also gotten even crazier with iDubbbz's Creator Clash event that he held. But it's starting to get to a point where a lot of these events are becoming underwhelming, or I just don't care for them. It's getting to a point where it's like too big to where there's like tons of different YouTubers fighting each other. Most of them I've never heard of. Although I'm still excited for Creator Clash. I'm going to be excited for it every time it happens because of just how bizarre the first one was. And I can't imagine the second one is going to be less bizarre, but it could change, you know, if these events, you know, start to get more exciting, maybe my interest will go up again. Maybe even my interest in boxing as a whole, you know, like seeing 2 people fight is starting to get me really excited, especially with my somehow newfound interest in the WWE, which I might talk about in a future episode. Logan Paul fought Mayweather last summer in 2021. And when that happened, when that was announced, first of all, I was like, there's no way. For one, Logan lost his fight to KSI. So why is he fighting Mayweather? And 2, what fucking timeline are we in that this is what's happening? You know, influencer boxing got to a point where a YouTuber was fighting the arguably one of the best boxing fighters of all time with an undefeated 50-0 and just having all of these victories under his belt, and him having an exhibition match with Logan Paul was insane to even think about. So now, a year later, we see that he's fighting Deji. The fact that Deji has had 1 win and now he's jumping all the way to the final boss, Floyd Mayweather. I don't really know much about Mayweather. I have never really cared for Floyd Mayweather. I just know that he's famous because of the fact that he's a pro boxer and one of the best at that. First time I had ever heard about him was when he fought Pacquiao back in 2015, I think that was. And then he fought Conor McGregor. Apparently they're looking to do a round 2 of that, so I might even tune in for that at this point. Also, Logan Paul still hasn't technically had a W, but he might even have one pretty soon. I heard he might be in the next Misfits boxing card in January or something. That would be pretty sick. But back to Deji. The fact that this is happening is crazy, and Jake Paul has even come out and he's been like, Comedy Shorts gamer. He's fighting a YouTuber. He's taking all these low fights. Jake also had a back and forth with Mayweather at the press conference where he stole his hat and then got a tattoo of a hat saying "Gotcha hat." That became a little thing. Jake Paul ended up promoting that fight a lot more than the both of the fighters combined. I thought that was crazy. But we'll just have to see how this goes down. I really don't know what to expect. I'm sure it's going to be just like the Logan Paul fight where it's an exhibition match. We'll just have to see how well Deji does. There won't be a winner of the fight if it's just like the one with Logan Paul. So regardless of, win or lose, whatever it is, I just want to see how long it will last, or if Deji even knocks out Mayweather. People are saying it might happen. I don't know about that one. I have no idea. But I'm really invested to see how this will go. What do you guys think about Deji versus Mayweather? Let me know in the comments below. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, comment below your thoughts on each of the news updates I talked about today. Be sure to listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, etc. Leave a rating and write a review. Let me know what you guys think of the podcast. I'm also on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook with the podcast, so be sure to follow those. Links in the description. With that said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take it easy. Peace.